it's crazy that the developers don't employ more women architects, because we famously can feel what it's going to be like for the human being in or outside the building we design. We're very practical. We bring up families, we run houses, we have a job, we organize the holiday, we have our heads in lots of different places at the same time. It's what you need to do as an architect. How people sit in their space, how people fit in their space, how people fit in their city, how people fit in their landscape. I was always interested in that. Home is very important because it is your root. It's your grounded place. I don't want meaningless stuff around. I mean, I don't like clutter, because how many things can you think about at once? I don't really know what decoration is. I mean, if you need a chair, it's got to be comfy. If you need a shower, it's got to work. I don't know what is decoration. You tell me.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Matt.
Welcome to Homing. Thanks for being on the podcast. It was very nice to have a look around the house earlier, so thank you for that. And as always, we'll make that tour available to people on Patreon. I want to talk about this house, but I also want to talk about your origin story, if I can put it like slightly ominous terms. Where did you grow up?
I grew up mainly in London, but also in the country in Sussex, in quite a remote place with no other houses around, with woods and trees and mud and streams.
So you divided your time between the two?
Yeah.
So what was that? Was that a kind of country house for the holidays kind of thing?
Yeah. And my father farmed there a bit, so yeah.
And whereabouts in London were you?
Just off Kensington High Street.
Okay, so you haven't come far?
No.
Do you feel connected to West London in general?
When I've lived in London, I've always lived in West London.
Yeah.
I mean, when I left home as a teenager, I moved just north of Notting Hill Gate. And then I moved around in that area for a while. And then I only came to Earl's Court, which is where we are now, by chance. It's not an area I would particularly choose, but I managed to find a piece of land, or at least a bit of land with some rough garages on it, where I built this house. So it was really because of the land that I've moved here.
Okay. But if I asked you to say where you belong in the world, where is home from a geographical standpoint, what would you say?
I've always moved around a bit.
Have you?
So I moved my home. But I have a place in Northamptonshire that I've rented, a little ancient cottage that I've rented for 40 years, which I'm about to have to give up, which is a pity because there's so much of my life invested in it. But apart from that, I've lived in London. I've lived in Paris for a couple of years. I've lived in the French Alps for a bit over a year with the children when they were still at school. And now I divide my time between London and Venice, where I've got an apartment.
Okay. Why do you think you've moved around like that then? Do you like the excitement of it?
I'm curious about places, and I like to be in culturally different places, and I like different landscapes around me. And, you know, that landscape in Venice is very unusual. You know, Venice, the city, is what most people think of, but Venice, the city, is in Venice, the lagoon. And there's a big lagoon, and it has islands on it, and it has huge expanses of amazing flat water. The horizon is very, very flat, and I have a boat, very ordinary little boat, which I love to go around on. And you experience the water, the sky, the fog, the sun, the birds. It's very special.
Yeah. So thinking about your childhood, how would you describe the kind of character that you were?
People don't change, really.
Go on.
I realise. They're always kind of the same. I think we're born how we are and we change a little. We hopefully become a little more wise, but otherwise, how would I describe myself? Curious, sort of outgoing, but also a little bit shy, happy to take some risks if I think that those risks will be interesting, exciting, or open my horizons. Yeah, that sort of thing.
So how did that play out when you were a kid then? What were you into? What would
I
we have found you
made
doing?
things.
Okay.
There was a very good television program when I was growing up called Blue Peter, and every week they made something and they taught you how to make something as a child. So that was very important. It was all scissors and glue and bits of cardboard and how to make a whole world out of a cereal packet and a squeegee bottle or whatever. Anyway, that's what I did. I made stuff. And, you go from there to making buildings. It's just an extension of the same. You take some materials and you see how you can glue them together.
Do you think that's an innate thing then, or were you shown how to do that?
Oh, it's an innate thing. You have to want to do it. You have to think, oh, I'm thrilled by the idea of this pot of glue or this thing of paint or,
Yeah.
That's what thrilled me. I have a grandson now and he's thrilled about numbers and he's always adding up and, doing multiplications and things. That's his thing. My thing was putting stuff together and sticking it together and placing it together and seeing how one thing faced off against another thing.
Okay, so you think that you thought in a three-dimensional way, in a funny sense.
Visual way, perhaps.
Visual way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about the household in London. So who were you living with in terms of parents, siblings, etc.?
I have a brother and I had a mother and a father who've both died now.
Okay.
And we lived a very, very conventional life. But we were a stone's throw from Bus Stop and Bieber and all the gorgeous and incredible and exciting stores that were on Kensington High Street. So when I was going to school, you'd come back on the bus, age 13, hop off at Bieber, go and sit at those dressing tables, which they had all laid out where you could try all the makeup samples, do a ridiculous and ghastly makeup effect, and then wipe it off before you got home. That was life.
So you said it was quite a sort of conventional life.
Very conventional.
Did you feel a bit less conventional than that?
I felt somewhat trapped.
Okay.
So when I was 16, I got my provisional driving license as soon as you can fill out the form. At 17, I registered for my driving test and passed at sort of 17 and a half. And then I got my grandmother to give me a little car and I was off.
Okay.
Boom. I mean, exploring the world, not deserting my parents, but exploring the world, driving to Italy, looking and seeing and meeting people. That's what I liked to do when I was very young.
Why do you think you felt that sense of being trapped?
Well, it's, not as interesting. The world was more interesting outside the doors.
Okay.
There was a lot more. London was very interesting in the late 70s. Incredibly interesting. I mean, I was just too young to properly experience punk, unfortunately, because that was an incredible moment. I mean, literally by a year or two. But after that, New Romantics and all the music and the clubs were so good in London. And then I got into magazines. And by 18, I was working for a magazine that was then called Harper's and Queen. I'm not sure if it exists anymore. And the editor gave me 4 pages to do, age 18. Every month I'd have these pages that I could fill with anything I liked, basically. I mean, the freedom was amazing. And London was really happening. And then I moved to Vogue, and then I did a stage at French Vogue, and then I moved to Tatler when Tatler was a really great magazine under Mark Boxer. Very good team there, fantastic team. Very interesting. I could work with all the fashion photographers, best in the world if I wanted to, which I did. So, it was a jolly exciting moment to be in fashion. And fashion was not controlled by advertisers then, which people don't realize who work now. When I was working at Vogue, we did not have to put in our shoots clothing from advertisers if we didn't want to. I mean, now you couldn't even move without putting in advertisers' clothes. But what it allowed us to do was to influence fashion, actually.
Yeah.
There were, designers were influenced by things that we did in our pictures or things that we did in ourselves, actually.
Go on, tell me about that.
Well, if you were devising a photo shoot on a theme, we did quite a lot of themed shoots. You might call up a designer and say, I'm doing a shoot about Andrew Wyeth. I'm thinking of one of Grace Coddington's shoots when I was her assistant. Andrew Wyeth, the American painter, and Maine, and soft light and gentleness and pastel colors. Can you make me this? I need a skirt like this, or a twin set like that, and the designers would do it, and then that would influence their collection. When I was working for Azzedine, which I did when I left British Vogue, I worked for Azzedine to put together photos of his collections up until that point. And I remember once being in his place and him saying, we're going to the fashion Oscars. What are the fashion Oscars? I don't know. Anyway, you've got to wear something. So what can I lend you to wear? I'm going to give you this. And it was like a chiffon coat, very floaty. And there was a skinny dress that went underneath it. I cannot wear a skinny dress. I'm too embarrassed. So I got back to my hotel and I looked at it and I thought, I can't wear the skinny dress, but the black floaty thing is nice. And it had a big, strong belt that went with it. I thought, I can wear that, but what can I do? I thought, well, all I've got with me is black trousers and a white shirt, which is kind of a uniform and still remains a uniform. I'll put it on over that. And so I just did. And it was like a coat. It was fine. It was black mousseline with seams on it. And when he saw me, he said, I thought, he's going to be furious. I'm not wearing the right outfit, but I can't wear this dress. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And he turned me around and he started looking. And what it ended up being is I inadvertently had shown up all the seams by putting a white shirt behind it. And so then he realized, I could make this coat even more seamed and put a white shirt under it. Then that turned into a section of his next show, which was white taffeta shirts that were very waisted and sort of with peplums, and these black mousseline like coats that went over. And of course, all the seams on the mousseline all were backlit with this white. So anyway, so you could do things in those days where you were creatively influencing, you were being influenced. It was a very nice back and forth. And, it was wonderful. And that I don't know if it happened so much. Soon after that, I left fashion and started to study architecture because I realized I really wanted to create myself rather than demonstrate other people's creations. Obviously, you create images when you're styling, but I suddenly thought, I want to make the clothes. Well, I don't want to make the clothes. I want to make buildings. Yeah. So then I changed to architecture.
So in this period, you were on the cover of ID magazine, weren't you?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I think they wanted me on the cover, and I was shooting something with David Bailey.
When you say shooting something with him, in what capacity?
I was the stylist of something. I can't remember. I was styling something and working with Bailey, and I said, look, ID want a picture of me, and I've got to wink. Will you do it, Bailey? So he said, okay, sit there. So you sit on the stool, and he said, wink, and I can't wink. And he said, well, you're bloody useless. I said, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So he then got this tape and stuck it over my eye. And then for some reason, they had Jack Nicholson was in the studio. I don't know why. So they were, two old devils behind the camera going, making monkey noises. Just being silly. So that's why I'm grinning, because they're ridiculous, the pair of them. And I've got this stupid tape stuck over my eye because I can't wink. And the whole thing's a fiasco. It turned out like a nice picture.
It's a great picture.
Yeah, it was funny.
The
idiot who can't wink. I really can't.
That's really funny. But there's also, it was influential, I think, because there's a kind of androgyny to it as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
There's a boyishness to the way that you look in that image.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I know that, for example, you don't like to wear makeup and so on. Just tell me about that kind of androgyny and why that is representative of you in some way.
Well, I think it was all just happened very naturally. When I was a young teenager, I used to wear girly clothes and have jewelry and play around with makeup and stuff like that. And then one day, I had a friend who was going to Princess Diana's wedding as a journalist. And when I heard he was going, I said, how are you going to get there? And he said, well, I suppose I'll take a taxi. And we have to get there really early because journalists have to be in and sitting in their seats hours before the proper guests arrive. And okay. I said, well, don't take a taxi. I'll drive you. So then I thought, well, if you're driving somebody, you have to be a chauffeur. I'll borrow a suit. So I borrowed a Piero de Monzi grey flannel suit. And then I borrowed a chauffeur's cap from, who did I borrow? Anyway, I borrowed a chauffeur's cap. And I drove down the Mall, which was so exciting because we were one of the first cars to drive down the Mall because the press had to get there so early and he was quite junior. And so all those people that had been sleeping all night, they were like, yay! So it was a real laugh. I had a yellow Jeep with a soft top. I mean, it was nuts. And we drove down. And then after I dropped him off, I drove around back to this part of London where, you know, friends were giving parties on royal wedding day. Prince Charles marrying Lady Diana Spencer, yoo-hoo, day off work, everybody partying, and it was a laugh. And I came to some couple of parties along the King's Road or something. People said, oh, that's a good suit. Oh, I like that suit. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe this is a good look. Hadn't quite found my look before then. So then I had success. So I thought, okay, well, we'll run that one then. So I did. And
you're still going for the same look now, right? Is that fair to say?
What happened is that when I was working for magazines, the women in the magazines dress, and they dress in the latest, and they do all the looks. And I've always liked to be a little bit apart. So I thought, I don't want to compete, and I don't really want to be in a female uniform. I don't really want to be in a female fashion uniform. So I used to wear literally a uniform. I used to wear Mao suits or simple overalls or something. And also I couldn't afford. There might have been some expensive, wonderful fashion I wanted to wear, but I wouldn't have been able to afford it. So I was quite into sort of workwear. And then it sort of stuck, really. And when I moved to architecture, you know, it's quite difficult being in the construction industry as a woman. Most of the construction industry is run by men. And until quite recently, you still went into site offices and there were those ridiculous calendars of sort of topless 17-year-olds over the filthy kettle and mugs. You know, you think, oh, come on, guys. You know, it's a bit of a backward world, although it's obviously getting better. And it's much better outside the UK. We're particularly sort of backward in that respect, I think, because I don't see that in Europe ever, or in the Far East, actually. No way. I mean, they don't even have those page 3 girls. I don't know, perhaps we don't have page 3 girls anymore, probably not, but...
Luckily, page 3 doesn't exist anymore,
gone.
But yeah, you're right. There's an undercurrent of it
There's
still.
a bit of an undercurrent. So it's just much easier to be in a suit or something simple, some classic clothes. I'm not drawing attention to the fact I could be anything. I'm an it. It's better. Prefer it.
I love that. That's really interesting. So you feel like it helps you sort of find the right level with the people you're communicating with somehow?
It wrong-foots them. I'm obviously quite feminine, actually, in the way that I speak, in the way that I communicate. It's quite nice to be a little bit austere in the way I dress. I'm more difficult to pigeonhole, I think, which I think makes people keep an open mind. Yeah. So I think maybe that's part of it.
That's really brilliant.
But, you know, when I was young, it's like a game. If you walk into a boardroom of Japanese businessmen who are all wearing grey suits and you know they're going to be wearing grey suits, what do you wear? Obviously a grey suit. Because then they don't know what's come in and it makes them stop and think and, you know.
And am I right in saying you don't wear makeup and you never really have much?
I don't wear makeup, and occasionally I think, God, I really should try and put a bit of makeup to sort of improve things a bit. And my daughter Edie says, Mama, no, you can't start now. And I know I can't. I mean, about once every 5 years, I succumb and allow someone to put a bit of makeup on me because I think, well, I'm sure they can, you know, improve things. And very often it's not an improvement at all. And I just look pasty or I look like a drag queen or something. It's just, no, it's not good. It's much better just to be me.
And so, have you ever had long hair?
No, well, I did until I was about 9. I had it, you know, terrible sort of, a fringe and curtains. And then off.
Did you at the age of 9?
Well, my mother foolishly left me in the hairdresser's when she went shopping and just said, cut her hair. And he said, what do you want? And so I said, take it off. He said, your mother won't mind? Of course she won't mind.
That's amazing, though, isn't it, to be that sure of yourself at that age? Because that's quite unusual.
I didn't like being a spectacle.
Ah, okay.
And I felt I was didn't fit having, these great long things. Psychologically didn't work for me.
Is that a shyness then?
No, I just felt like a dodo. I don't know, like a wig, like I was wearing a wig or something. I don't know.
Tell me about working with Grace Coddington, because that's pretty amazing.
Well, I was a very good assistant.
Yeah.
I am a very good organised person.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so her life was made much simpler by me being the person that was organising the stuff she needed organised.
Is that one of your superpowers then?
Yeah.
Yeah, because as an architect, I suppose it's just spinning plates all the time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You have to be able to do so many things as an architect. And this is one reason why I think it's crazy that the developers don't employ more women architects, because we famously can feel what it's going to be like for the human being in or outside the building we design. We're very practical. We bring up families, we run houses, we have a job, we organize the holiday, we have our heads in lots of different places at the same time, which is what you need to do as an architect. You need to be able to technically understand something, but you can't just you have to have around in the back of your mind all these other facets which are important. And one of them is aesthetic, one of them's lighting, one of them's functionality, which is incredibly important. And there are multiple functionalities in a building. And then there's all the technical stuff to make the thing breathe right, warm right, cool right, all those things, and fit into the environment and have a feel for your surroundings and who are the people who are going to look at your building. You want them to go by and think, oh, that's nice, or a smile to come on their face, or think, oh, that's improved that corner of our city, or whatever. So there are many, many things you have to hold in your head at the same time, and budgets and timing. Women are very good at doing multiple things at all sort of staggered at the same time.
Definitely. Yeah,
I mean, I'm extremely good at prioritizing. I can have 50 things I need to do, but we do that first, because I know it's important, because I can see instinctively that until we've done that, these other 5 things can't happen. I think it's a woman's skill, and I think that hopefully more and more women architects will be brought in to design architecture, because it's crazy not. Anyway.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so you've been working with Grace Coddington and Azzedine Alaïa, and you've been on the cover of ID, working with David Bailey. Yeah. This is a pretty amazing world you're immersed in. And then suddenly, architecture. So explain that pivot to me.
By the way, before I did architecture, I thought maybe I wanted to be a film director. And so I went to see Fellini and in Cinecittà, which is amazing place to go, and he cast me in a film.
Okay.
And so
you've been in the Fellini film as well?
I have. I mean, the film kind of morphed into something else. Even Fellini couldn't make the film he wanted to make. He wanted to make a film which was Kafka's America, and he wanted me to play Carl. But even he couldn't raise the money and get the thing going, so he had to turn it into a completely different film called L'Intervista, which is kind of sampling history of his films and bringing back the stars, Marcello Mastroianni and Anita Ekberg as older people talking and having a conversation with nothing to do with America. So if Fellini can't make the film he wants to make, what hope did I have? So I realized, okay, that's a fiasco. It's hopeless. I mean, so then I thought, okay, so I did a bit more fashion, and then I thought, okay, architecture. I'll go back to architecture.
Why?
Because as a child, I'd sort of thought I might want to do architecture. So I'd sort of struggled through a maths A-level to make sure I had at least one maths or science A-level in case I needed to apply. And because I like environment, I like how people sit in their space, how people fit in their space, how people fit in their city, how people fit in their landscape. I was always interested in that.
So you got a place at the AA? The Architectural Association.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying you didn't have anything to show them in terms of work?
I had my fashion show sketchbooks.
Okay, so you took those.
They said, bring your sketches, bring your portfolio. I said, what portfolio? I don't have a portfolio. Well, haven't you got anything? I said, well, I've got my fashion show sketchbooks. Oh, bring those. They said, okay. So I turn up to this little room in the AA where there is a panel of sort of tutors and I think one student rep in top-to-toe Azzedine, one of those really great waisted greatcoats and some kind of, he did beautiful suits. I used to wear these incredible suits. And with a little stack of leather-bound notebooks, which I put on the table. And who are you? And I said who I was. And I said, I'm terribly sorry I don't have a portfolio, but I got my fashion show sketchbooks if you want to see those. So you spin around, this is Versace and that's Iman wearing this one. And the reason we sketch them, we had to sketch them very fast because they come quite fast, the girls past us. So ding, ding, ding. And this is Romeo Gigli and this is Azzedine and this is this. And that's all I've got. And they looked at me and thought, what is this? I'm sure they did. I don't know. Anyway, to give them their credit, they thought, okay, well, we'll take a punt on this one. And half of them said, she's never going to stick it more than 3 weeks. And other people, apparently, I got a bit of feedback afterwards, said, no, I think she might.
How old were you then?
26, I think. Yeah.
That's exactly the age when I decided I wanted to be an architect and went to architecture school as well. So I went to the Bartlett age 26.
Yeah. Okay.
Having had a career in magazines and so on.
Okay, so same as me.
So I can totally identify with it. But I got as far as a term in, and then we'd set up the modern house at the same time. So I had a quick decision to make, and I pivoted over to that. But they're sliding doors things, aren't they? But it does take quite a lot of conviction to go through the architectural educational process at that time in your life, actually. So how did you start in terms of actual work then?
Well, because I was a bit older, once I got into my third year, I was like knocking 30, and I had friends who had started businesses, wanted an architect. And so I was rung up by these friends who ran a magazine publishing company saying, we've just got new offices, we need an architect. I said, but I'm not qualified. My friend Neil Mendoza said, well, look, if you don't do it, Sophie, I'm doing it. And I'm certainly not qualified. So would you please come over and look at it and just tell us what you think we should do? So, okay. So it started in my third year. I also had a friend, Norman Rosenthal, who was at the Royal Academy, and he was having a problem with the pop art exhibition. He didn't like the design that the designers had proposed. He said, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd make everything white in your galleries. You can't put pop art against these brown floors, brown, dados and everything. You've got to just make everything white, I think.
Yeah.
And so I did that as well. We put white linoleum across all the gallery floors, just to make a white background. And to make a sort of industrial background, not a Victoria. Anyway. So I did that. So I was quite working in my third year. And then by my year out, I had a really busy, I'd opened my office and had someone working for me, and we were doing a couple of houses and stuff. So by the time I went back to the AA for my fourth and fifth year, I had a functioning architectural practice. So I was sort of juggling things. That was fine.
And wasn't Paul Smith one of your first clients?
Yeah, Paul Smith was one of my first clients. That was after I'd qualified.
How did that come about?
He used to come over and say, shall we have breakfast? Yeah, okay. So he'd come to the office, he'd bring the croissants, I'll make the coffee, and we'd chat. And after a few visits, I said, it's lovely having breakfast with you, Paul. Really nice. We'd chat about all kinds of things. Is there anything you want? Well, I've just bought this property and maybe blah, 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 whatever. And so it went from there. And I did Westbourne House, which was the big house on the corner in Notting Hill, which is like a Paul Smith department store with all the collections in it, women's, the men's, the objects, the accessories, all the stuff.
Yeah, just fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic shop.
But I'd known him from years back because I'd known him when I was working in fashion. So I knew him anyway.
So you've worked with, Acne Studios, Yohji, Yamamoto, Chloe, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
How do you explain why you connect with fashion brands, or rather why they want to work with you specifically on their stores?
I understand their fashion.
Okay.
So if the creative director says, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm feeling at the moment, I understand what they're saying. I understand them. I understand what they mean. And quite often they talk in shorthand. It's like sort of fashion-y shorthand. I get it. So I can, I know what they're up to. And also, if they don't tell me much, but I see what they're doing, I can understand where it's coming from. They don't have to. It's helpful if they can speak a bit, because you can misinterpret sometimes. But I can generally understand what it's all about and understand the feel behind the inspiration that's producing these clothes and what they mean in terms of the atmosphere and the kind of character of the brand. So, and that's because I've worked in fashion for nearly a decade. So I think I probably have an advantage in a way.
Yeah.
And when I do the first meeting and they ask me questions, I can surprise them with my answers and drag things out of them, and then they feel it's been a conversation that was rewarding for them too. Because I'm interested in them. All these fashion brands are doing different things. They've all got their message, and some are more defined and some are less defined, but the architecture has to embody the message of the brand, the character, the ethos, the kind of the values, but also the integrity of who they are. And I think this is what a lot of branding agencies don't really get. And I get these branding documents which say, a lot of buzzwords, and it doesn't actually help you at all. And I want to psychologically understand the brand. I need to, in order to be able to make a proposal for them that would make sense for them. And that's why I can do such different brands. I've done Mugler, which is all, completely zhuzhy and amazing, with perfume bottles with shooting stars and this and that. But you have to get into it and understand what they're about. And then, we did a completely blue brushed aluminium louvered shop in Shanghai for them because it was who they were. It's modernistic, futuristic. It's this blue color that is them. You have to get in the mood of it to the point where you can say, don't let's put just blue accents. Let's be apologetic about this. It should be a blue store. Oh, we can't do blue. Yeah, you can do blue. I'll find a way where you can do everything blue, so that it really is you. So all these jobs are not about my taste. They're about, who are you, brand? Who are you? What does it mean? Where do you come from? Where are you going? Yeah, it's not about me.
So somewhere in the middle of you working with all these brands, getting your architecture practice up and running, you got married and started a family.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started your family then?
I think I was 28 when I had Arthur. And I have 3 children.
Okay.
Yeah.
By modern standards, that's actually quite young.
Yeah. By modern standards, it is, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. So what was that like for you?
Pretty chaotic, because I was I was doing my finals at the AA. I was running a practice, and running a house and having babies is quite exhausted too. So yeah, I was crazily busy actually.
Yeah.
But, it's very good having children when you're studying because you've got long summer holidays like kids do. So that's all very good. So I can't quite remember how it worked out, but I think certainly when Arthur and Edie were little and going to nursery school, I had the same summer holidays as they did. So that was nice. So I thought, oh, this is great. It would have been, I was also running, building at the same time. But, at least it wasn't a full year of study. And because I was experienced, I knew how to get work done. Work that takes students 5 days took me 2 days because I work much more quick. I make decisions much more quickly.
If we were to ask your children to describe you as a mum, what do you think they would say?
You'll have to ask them. I don't know.
Do you think the same things would apply in terms of your creativity and practicality combining somehow?
I really don't. You really have to ask them. But I value family very highly, so I did concentrate a lot on nurturing them. And I think they've all 3 turned out quite well. It really concerns me that they're moving through life in a way that they're happy with, that they're succeeding in the things they want to succeed in, and all of that just needs encouragement and attention and, and it really concerns me if ever, one of my children is more distant or something like that. I think, oh, what's going on? What's happening there? Come back.
And what do they all do now?
My oldest is a software engineer, and he has a little boy who's 3 years old, who he's teaching maths to, and who can do his 9 times table, age 3.
I love it.
And amazing amounts of mental arithmetic they do together. So they're the boys. And then I have a daughter, Edie, who is an obsessive horse rider. She has something like crazy, like 6 horses, and she does 3-day eventing. And then to fund it, she does modeling. And then my youngest one is Olympia, and she is a scientist, and she is a doctor, and she's just finished some postdoctoral research in Toulouse, and she's just won a British Academy Fellowship, and she'll be working from Cambridge in the autumn. And so that's very wonderful. And she's the first sort of scientist in our side of the family. So
What a great mix.
I know, it's good, isn't it?
Isn't it exciting when children do something that you can't do or that you hadn't thought of doing?
Absolutely.
It's the best.
I mean, I can't do any of the things they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talking about the modelling, wasn't your mum a model as well?
She was, but it was a much more low-key thing in those days.
Yeah.
She was a model in the 50s.
What kind of modelling did she do?
Well, a little bit of photos and quite a lot of sort of house modelling where you'd, model for a house. And, fashion shows were not like fashion shows are now. They were a few invited people, no music. You'd walk up and down, and sometimes with a number, so they knew which number you were,
Yeah.
But yeah, she was a glamorous thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very glamorous family. What did your dad do for work then?
He did farming and he did distribution of fruit and vegetables.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in London with, a couple of vans and people driving stuff to restaurants and whatever.
Yeah. Is there any history of design or architecture in the family then?
I don't think so. No.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I know, I kind of sprang out of nowhere.
Well, talking of design and architecture, let's talk about this house.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you found it and what was here when you got here.
So I used to search the auction catalogues to see what was up, and this plot of land here came up for sale. It had 3 very dilapidated 1950s garages on it and a little forecourt covered in other people's rubbish. And I thought, I'll buy that and get planning permission for something, see, what I can get. So eventually I got planning permission for this house after some struggles.
Yeah, tell me about what the neighbours thought.
Well, I don't want to be impolite, but Kensington and Chelsea have a lot of people living that don't like change, and anything new and different is alarming for them. And they're very good at mobilizing into, community groups suddenly appear. We're the something community association, really. When did you incorporate? Last week. Okay. And 25 of us say no. And you think, oh, God. Anyway, eventually we got planning permission.
How long did that take?
About 1.5 years or something.
Yeah.
And then, I just wanted to build a little house where I could live. My children had all flown the nest, and I wanted a small place with a spare room just for me, of my architecture that I could enjoy living in and that felt comfortable for me.
A quick interlude to let you know that there's a house tour to accompany this episode, which is available to insiders on Patreon. Here's a short preview. I mean, it's noticeable you don't even have a table. I mean, you have a dining table, but you don't have a coffee table, for example.
I hate coffee tables. I'm allergic to coffee
tables. Go on, tell me about that.
Coffee table books.
Go on.
Well, what are they for?
For coffee.
No, but you don't. You've got to lean forward. I don't like little diddy tables all over the place. I mean, I like this Jasper Morrison cork stool, and we sometimes use that. But if this was a little table with little legs, I mean, it's so easy to knock it over.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't like all the bittiness. So that's why I put these tables on the columns. But okay, we're going to need tables as side tables. And I really like this thing of casting a functional element onto a structural element.
Yeah, I love that.
The column is obviously structural, holding up the roof slab. But then we added this concrete table all cast at the same time and then just ground the surface so that the structural thing is kind of growing a piece of function.
So what was the starting point for the design itself and the kind of form of the building?
By definition, we had to be on street level and one level below. So to get light into the house, to get light into the basement, to have a place which was really good for entertaining. So to have one room where we could, which is where we're sitting now, which is big enough that you can have a lot of people in. The windows open behind us, the windows open over there. So you've got trees all around. So you want to feel, I wanted to feel the gardens all around us. And design something which felt very grounded, and because we were digging down, we had to have concrete foundations and basically a concrete box in the ground. We built right up to the perimeters, and then thought, well, let's build up in concrete. And so we built up in concrete, columns, slabs, rather articulated the concrete behind, and then interspersed glass to contain it, to wrap over. So it's a concrete structure within a glass box, really. And it's a play on the different areas of glass, the areas of concrete structure. And then within that structure, quite complicated to achieve, but simple now, electrics and lighting in these recessed panels, so that the rest of the structure is clean without switches on it. Everything is contained in these panels which are around the room.
Yeah, tell us about those
places.
panels, because if someone's watching, they can see the panel here behind you. But so that's
other ones have light switches, heating thermostats, plug sockets, lighting circuits. This upper part is illuminated. That gives the light to the room. And they're all integrated in the structural columns, which were designed at the same time as these electrical boxes, so that the structural engineers and we were working at the same time to make sure we had the depth.
Yeah, I really love them. They're sort of quite slender, vertical stainless steel elements.
They're in maximum contrast to the brutal concrete, which is heavy and meant to be. The thing about this concrete is that I don't think that this house will be demolished, and therefore the amount of energy you are obliged to use to produce concrete over a lifespan of 100 years or so, or potentially more, then a concrete building can last.
Yeah.
It's not going to melt away.
Yeah. So we're in this urban context with buildings around us, but actually, it's very clear that you've spent a lot of time thinking about both privacy views and balancing that with light. So how do you go about that process?
We build a 3D computer model, and we see where the light is going to fall every month of the year, any time of the day. So we can plan the light, we can see the light path. So we know how the light's going to be. And so it was very, very important with this house, because we've got a basement there with a light well going down, like an internal patio. And it was very important to me that light actually came down into the patio in the basement. And it comes through the glass over the front of the house there. It passes through the glass there, and it comes into the basement. And we could see that on our 3D model. And it is, in fact, exactly how the 3D model showed it. So it's pretty accurate. And that's very important. I have an internal bathroom downstairs. I wanted to get some natural light into it. I realized on the 3D model that if we cut a glass window and a whitened glass window into the side of the shower, we could get light from the entrance hall area, natural light going in. So, and it's a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle of structure, glazing, and circulation, really, to get in and around and turn and see what you want to see, and still be able to get downstairs, down a staircase that's very tight without hitting your head, generates the curve of the stair,
Yeah, I really like what you were telling me earlier about how you enter the house through a small gate from the road.
Yeah.
You step down into a narrow external courtyard area.
Yeah.
Then you come into the entrance hall. And then from the entrance hall, you very clearly thought about the angle of approach from the hallway
Yeah.
into the space
Yeah.
so that you feel quite unleashed in some way.
Yes, I think it's important. You're coming from the street, you've maybe come from the tube. Psychologically, you've had the battering of the city, all those sounds and smells and stress and worry. And I just like to go gently into a house. So it gives you various sort of stages before you're in. There's a bit of a buffer.
Yeah.
So I like to do that.
You also told me that you don't like decoration.
Yes, I don't really know what decoration is. I mean, if you need a chair, it's got to be comfy.
Yeah.
If you need a shower, it's got to work. I don't know. If you want your books around you, great. I mean, I don't have bookcases here. I have all my books in Venice where I have an apartment. But they're not decoration. They're my books. They're on shelves. I look at them. I consult them. I arrange them vaguely. I don't know what is decoration. You tell me.
Well, I think this is so fascinating because in the same way that the way that you present yourself to the world, we talked about you don't wear makeup and it's quite pared back in some
Yeah.
ways. You have a similar sensibility in your architecture. So I don't think, is there even a painted surface in here?
Well, yes, that wall's painted and that wall's painted. But, it's blank paper. I mean, if you've got a bit of wall in, you end up inevitably with some walls in a house. If I feel that a wall needs some expression, for instance, in Edie's house that I built for her in Northamptonshire, there are two long curved walls, one which sort of kind of cradles the kitchen and the other that sort of curves around the bedrooms. I felt they needed to have more presence than the outside walls, which are either glass or there's some various panels that are just painted white or are oak boards. So I thought they should have, because they're doing something. They're holding the kitchen and they're holding the bedrooms. So what we did is we rendered them and we put dye in the render. I don't like paint, but if we thought, okay, well, we've got these long walls, we need to finish them with an amorphous something. They're going to be plastered. Well, maybe we'll do a rough plaster. Well, that's render because we're in the country. We're in somewhere more gritty than London. And so if it's render, what can we, well, render's kind of a grayish color, but maybe it'd be nice to, and then we just put some dye in it and made it a bit pinky. That was it. So it's not decoration because it's not on the surface, it's within the body of the material itself. So concrete isn't decoration, it's the body of the material itself. So on the whole, if I'm doing something, I like the actual material to be the thing that's making the so-called decoration, but actually it's necessary and it's got its own intrinsic character and color and texture, whatever.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that's the principle of truth to materials? Is
Probably
that a modernist principle,
like
isn't
that,
it?
maybe, yeah, something like that.
Why is that honesty important to you?
Oh, I don't know. I just sense it. If I can see a reason for doing something, then fine. And that's why it's quite nice working for fashion brands, because they often have things that there are often reasons why you have to do things that are more expressive, and that's fun. But I have to have the reason. Why? Because Paul Smith wanted to do a shop in a house. So what is a shop in a house? It took us a while for the penny to drop with both of us. No. So if you've got this house and you've got various rooms and you're selling menswear, women's wear, accessories, you need one room for each. How do you do the rooms? Well, the woman's room is a boudoir and the tailoring is a tailor shop and the thing. Okay, it took us a while to get there. Then you can have the fun of, what do you have in a tailor shop? You have an incredible mirror that opens out like this so you can see in the round. And what do you also need, some sort of surface to lay the suit on when it's made. Well, you've got the work tables, but what do you do? Well, it gives you the fun of thinking, let's go to the salvage yard and see what surfaces they've got. Oh, they've got 3-inch, 4-inch thick green slabs of marble that came out of a bank. Well, that would be nice to lay a grey flannel suit on. You start having reasons why you can bring things in. So if you're working for fashion people, you have reasons why you can bring things in. Like, for Max Mara, vitreous enamel for the shop front, coloured camel, because they're all, in my opinion, all about camel coats that, they make these very nice coats and their quintessential coat is a camel raglan-sleeved overcoat. And so what should the shop front be? Camel coloured. But what is camel colour? Well, the nicest way you can make a colour that's clean and not a sort of dull colour like a stone colour or something is by using the vitreous enamel that they use on bathtubs. Because it's absolutely fabulous quality and it's baked into the metal backing. And it can be camel or any colour you like. So, you can find fun. Then I love to do it. It's fun.
Would you call yourself a minimalist?
No.
Why wouldn't you?
Because I'm happy to be expressive, if there's a good reason.
Yeah. So how does that expression come through in here, would you say?
Probably the curved door and these panels and things. I don't think this is a minimalist house, actually. And because of... But a house is slightly different because it's where you, as a person, need to be very comfortable and rested and able to rest. But I put a lot of art in my houses. I like to see things that give me pleasure, and they have, I'm not into tasteful art.
Yeah.
I'm into, what is this piece of art? What does it mean? What angst has passed through this artist to produce this thing?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of story in the depth of the art that I choose to put on the walls.
Yeah.
Or, around the place.
Would you find it quite stressful to live with quite a bit more stuff in here?
I like to have a calm head. And I could put more things in, but they need to add to the story of my life in some way, So things around me either connect to my earlier life, or they're things I've had in previous houses, or they're pieces of art that are from places where I visited, or, particularly the tribal art. That's all from places where I've visited: Vanuatu, Sepik River, Trobriand Islands. I like to have things that remind me of experiences in my life. I don't want meaningless stuff around. I don't like clutter, because how many things can you think about at once?
That's a great way of putting it. So everything here has a reason, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From the materials you've used to the objects you live with.
Yeah.
You could explain to me exactly why that plug socket is there, and also why, you live with that piece of tribal art on there.
Yeah. I could.
That's great. I love it. Acoustics, Sophie.
Yes.
Which I think is such a key part of a place you live in. How do you describe the acoustics in here?
Well, the acoustics are good in here. When we were sort of 3/4 built, I suddenly thought, oh my God, every surface is hard. Help. What are we going to do about the acoustics? And I have in a previous house put acoustic foam on the ceiling above the dining table. You can get very nice white sort of acoustic foam that's kind of ridged or corrugated or whatever. It looks very good, just as a kind of element. White ceiling, white foam, and it just absorbs the sound of the clatter of a dinner conversation or whatever.
Does that come as a panel, or do you have to apply it?
You buy it as a panel and you spray mount it and stick it up.
Okay.
It's very light. But in here, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I did have it in the back of my mind. We might have to do something. When it was finished, I realized that the surface of this concrete, which has little pits all over it because it was cast against very rough wood boards, is very, very good acoustically. And that was a revelation, and that was a big advantage. We don't need to do anything. The acoustics are great, really good for living. You can have a party in here of 40 people, and it doesn't feel reverberative. The acoustics are good.
Yeah. So I interviewed Alain de Botton not long ago.
Yeah.
He was very interesting because he lives in quite a pared back way, and he really loves modern architecture. And he grew up in Switzerland in modernist surrounds.
Yeah.
And he's very convinced that that's how he likes to live. And to the extent that he wouldn't like to live in an old building, he said. He's relatively extreme, I would say. But his thesis is that modernists like himself, possibly like you, he put himself in the camp that it's something to do with psychological insecurity.
Yeah, but he's a psychologist.
I
know. I've lived for 40 years in Northamptonshire, down a gated road in one of the most beautiful parts of England, in a cottage which when I took it on in 1985, hadn't been modernized hadn't had any work done to it for like 10, 15 years. It had a basic bathroom and it didn't really have proper hot water, and it had some storage heaters. Part of the cottage is late 15th century, and the rest of it is probably 16th century. It's of the earth, it's of its place, its floors are brick, its upper floors are timber, and my bedroom had such old wood, it clearly had been, the planks had been cut with a long saw, like, before they had mechanized saws. I love that place. It's got so much history and age in it. I find the idea that people lived there with their animals in the downstairs and a dovecote above, and that at some point that upper area was covered over and the dovecote became inside the room, and there was a room above the animals, that the back cottage bit it's raised up a bit. So you go up onto these bricks, which when it's a very wet winter, they get darker because they're getting damper. Because if you take a sword, which I used to use as a poker for my fire, and you dig it down between the bricks, you can go right down to the hilt. It's just earth underneath. I loved being part of the land and part of the history. It's a part of England where they still have ridge and furrow fields. There's the remains of a medieval monastery. You can still see the earthworks where the monastery would have been. There are remains of fish ponds in the woods where the monks would have raised fish. You can see the rectangular shapes of the ponds. I like very much the history of a place. And I liked very much living. It was still quite austere, but the surfaces, the walls, the floors, the fire. I like fire, hearth as a center of a house. So no, I feel very happy in somewhere ancient.
So what you're saying is it's very contextual, isn't it? And
No,
actually,
it's the history. There's been hundreds of years of people living there.
no, but what I mean is, it sounds like that's absolutely the right building for there. But I think what you're saying really is this house. It's not everything of you, but it's what it needs to be in this context.
I think probably the common thread is that the place I live needs to have an integrity to it. And I think that cottage in the country, I didn't do any decoration, didn't paint the walls. For 40 years, I took them as they were. I didn't ever paint the walls.
Oh, wow.
They'd been lime washed in various colours by the previous tenant. And I left it. But I cleaned things up a bit. I have still, I'm having to give it up, unfortunately. But I have things in it that relate to my life and things I've found, things I brought on my travels, some quite nice art and things in there, a stove as well as the open fire. It's about life.
Yeah. I think that within our homes, we're quite grounded by the sort of everyday routines and rituals that we have going on. Are you quite routine based in the way that you live?
Somewhat. I mean, I have a sort of procedure for getting up and getting out into the world in the day, but I'm pretty flexible.
Are you an early riser?
Not really.
Not a morning person.
I get up slowly.
Yeah.
I like to do some exercise, have some breakfast. I'm not in a hurry, listen to the radio. I don't like taking early flights. I hate taking early flights.
Yeah.
Because I hate that.
Yeah. That's
All
great.
those early Eurostars to get to Paris in time to get to work before lunchtime is, that 8 a.m. Eurostar is pretty horrible.
Yeah.
But earlier than that, no way.
Yeah. So you exercise. Is there anything else that you do just in terms of your, just trying to keep yourself on an even keel? Because we're all very busy. You've got a huge amount going on work-wise.
Yeah.
Do you think about your well-being in a deliberate way like that?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I do Pilates every day.
Oh, right.
And I make sure I see friends. I like to see friends. I make lots of arrangements to see people. I love to see my family.
So you see your family. Do you live here on your own though?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you like your own company in that way?
If you've had a family, every day and every evening there are people around, and you're doing things. And then, so it was really only 4 or 5 years ago that I had evenings with only me.
Okay.
I mean, it is quite a luxury.
Do you like that?
I like it a couple of times a week, yeah. And it's very important. There are evenings when there's absolutely nothing I have to do. I mean, there always are things. You have like chores around the house, but it's really nice to have 0 evenings. That, I think, is important.
Yeah.
And a luxury, an incredible luxury.
Yeah. What's your place in Venice like then? Is that, presumably that's old, is it?
Yep, it's an apartment with high ceilings and terrazzo floors off a very lovely 15th century courtyard bang in the centre of Venice. And it contains all the things that were put into storage when I left my family house and moved to this little house. They all came out. They were all shipped to Venice. And there were all kinds of things I'd completely forgotten I had. It was wonderful. And all the books are there, and quite a lot of art and bits of furniture. And it's, it feels very nice. I feel very comfortable there.
Do you?
Yeah.
Why Venice, do you think?
It's an international village. So London has now become so big that I guess a lot of my friends have moved away. I don't know. I don't go out into the street and bump into friends in London.
Yeah.
I always used to when I was living here until I was about 40. Always. Couldn't move without bumping into a friend. Now I don't bump into friends in London. I think it's because it's so big and people have moved further out. In Venice, it's small. It's a small city. I always bump into friends when I go out in Venice. And it's extremely international. A lot of interesting people have moved there. So it's having a bit of a renaissance, I think. It's full of action. There's a lot of culture of all kinds. And it's got this thing that I'm so pleased I've found, which is within 10 minutes of me walking out of my house, which is right in the middle of Old Venice, within 10 minutes I can be on my boat and going out to the lagoon. And so within 15 minutes, I'm in the equivalent, the watery equivalent of going on a big country walk. It's big expanses, it's water, birds, sky. You can travel somewhere and have a jolly nice lunch at the end of it, which is also nice. But it's that decompressing thing that I used to get from driving to Northamptonshire, which was much harder work. Load the car, have you remembered everything you need to remember? You drive for an hour and 45 minutes on a Friday night in the traffic, get there, it's cold, freezing, you've got to light the fires. It's heavy, hard work. And then on Saturday morning, you feel decompressed, you can go for a lovely walk, Well, I can do that in Venice in 15 minutes, and I don't have to drive anywhere. I don't have to load the car. And, that's quite nice. So now, unfortunately, I'm having to give back my cottage to the estate I rented it from. I've already found my alternative, lovely outdoor experience thing. So, yeah.
Oh, it
and
sounds
it's
ideal.
Very calm there.
I love the idea of an international village.
Yeah.
It's a nice way to put it.
It really is.
Yeah. So my final question is generally the same, but in your view, Sophie, I mean, given everything we talked about, how do you summarize the role that the home plays in your life and its importance in your life or otherwise?
Home is very important because it is your root. It's your grounded place. So it's extremely important. And I've been thinking recently, one thing that I would really love to design as an architect, I'd love to build a hotel, because I would like to try and encapsulate in a hotel room the feeling of home. So when you go to the other side of the world and you're feeling a bit dislocated and you enter your hotel room, is it possible to make a hotel room that makes the majority of people feel like they've arrived at home? And that's a challenge I'd really like to do. And it's not about decoration, it's about the experience, what you see, what you feel, what you smell, what you hear. So I've been asking around friends, what does it mean for you? And very interesting answers you get from all kinds of different people. And so that's what I'm thinking about at the moment. How do you encapsulate the comfort of home when you're taken away from your real home and placed into, the microcosm of home? It's going to be your home for 2-3 nights. How do you make that happen?
Exactly, a
right?
fascinating challenge.
Yeah.
So what could you think of any elements that it might have?
Well, I think the things that are very important are light, sound, comfort, obviously, and a decoration that makes you feel like you're really at a place where you can do all the little things that you do when you're at home. The little basic, it's very personal, a hotel room. What do you put your feet on? What do you, how's your bathroom in relation to the bed? How is, and they can be really quite small hotel rooms. Do you want to be in a small hotel room? My personal opinion is you want to be in a not too big hotel room. You don't want to rattle around in, or you don't want too many choices. You want it simple. So you get in there and very quickly you understand how it works. Lighting is incredibly important.
Artificial lighting.
The natural light, if you're lucky enough to be able to get some natural light in, that's important. But the artificial lighting is extremely important. How you read, whether you read, where you read, what do you look at when you're in your bed? Ideally, not a TV. You can put a TV in a hotel room, but it doesn't have to be the horrible black plastic square facing the bed. It's so depressing. So I just think all those things just to make people restfully settle quickly so they can then have a good night's sleep.
Exactly.
I think I'd like to try that.
Let me know, because I couldn't agree more. And in fact, I always ask for the smallest hotel room because I quite like that feeling of being contained. I mean, not tiny,
Yeah.
but I agree. A big hotel room is not a great thing.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
I think it can be good, but it needs to lead to something. Everything needs to have a place and a reason. And you need to know where you are immediately. You don't need to learn your room.
Yeah, your approach has come through so clearly. It's fascinating. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's been fun talking to you.